Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine. Your host, Avi Meyer, and the greatest cameraman of all, Sonny Hersh.
Avi Meyers here, Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine, a presentation of Sonny Hersh and myself. Join us every single Thursday at 7:30 p.m., Friday at 2:30 p.m. on CAN TV in Chicago. Join us every Thursday at 8 p.m. on ECMC Evanston Community Media Center, Channel 6 in Evanston, and every Monday at 6 o'clock on Channels 19 or 35 in 30-some north and northwest suburbs. We urge you to go to your CAPS meeting and, help out with the, you'll find out what's really going on in the neighborhood and not these lies being spread by a certain political challenger whose name we're not going to mention right now. But she does lie a lot. And anyway, but we're not going to talk about her too much. It is my pleasure and privilege to have our resident jack of all trades expert, one of the leading election lawyers in the state of Illinois. And we're talking about Jim Nally. Jim, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Avi, and thanks for having me.
First of all, thank you. It's a pleasure. And we've got, about a dozen runoff elections?
Yes, the most in probably 20 to 25 years.
Wow. So any particular reason why we have this many runoffs this time?
Well, obviously there were a lot of incumbents who got into positions where they couldn't get 50% of the people in the ward to say, let's reelect this person, and you had some spirited challengers, well-funded challengers this time around. As you're aware, a number of the candidates who were running against incumbents were funded by some of the unions over the big box issue that had come up, and that gave a number of challengers the financial wherewithal to actually run a pretty good campaign.
Yeah, no, it does take quite a bit of money. You know what, I was thinking what a low-key campaign that Bernie Stone ran in the 50th Ward, and I was thinking there wasn't much money spent, and then somebody said, mailing cost $11,000, $12,000.
Right. It's very expensive to run for office, and even when you talk to people who are running, you're talking to people, if they're going to be credible to run for alderman in the city of Chicago these days, you better have $100,000 minimum.
Minimum. As a matter of fact, Greg Brewer, who finished third, said, I read where he said that he spent $264,000.
That's not uncommon. I was looking at some of the D2s for candidates, and that doesn't cover all the period of time up until the February election, but a good portion of it, at least the latest reports. And you'll see the full reports this summer, because there'll be a semi-annual report that will be due sometime in July for all the candidates. And that'll be real interesting to look at all these races, because you'll see the exact amount of money that was spent. But most of the D2s I'm looking at involving candidates in runoffs, they've spent at least $200,000.
Wow. And he, in his case, he only wound up getting something like 1,900 votes. But what he did, actually, that was different from my standpoint, is that he was advertising on cable like crazy. I saw him on the Food Network. I don't really watch the Comedy Channel except South Park, but people told me he was on that Jon Stewart show quite a bit. You know what?
This election, for the first time, actually to tip a hat to Ed Meyers from many years ago. To my knowledge, Ed was the first candidate to go on cable television in its infancy, and Ed was running for the county board in the mid-'80s.
Oh, I remember that.
As far as I know, he was the first person to actually utilize cable television and do television commercials, because it's so hard in an aldermanic race where you're just dealing with a limited geographic area to justify the cost of a broadcast, literally a broadcast, all over the viewing area. But with cable, that's changed the dynamics, because for instance, with the cable television system in Chicago, it broadcasts only in Chicago. Now you're still broadcasting to probably 49 other wards that it doesn't matter.
Well, actually, it breaks down even more than that, because I've actually looked at this to a certain extent. Because it depends. You've got Comcast, you've got RCN, then you've got DirecTV or the satellite stuff,
right.
But there's actually 5 different regions, so you can just narrow it down to one region. But one region still is approximately 10 wards. At least in Meyers' case, he's dealing to about a 17th of the county or something like that.
Yeah, actually, in his case, he was running citywide at the time.
Yeah.
So it made some sense. But you've seen a lot of candidates go to cable television, because It's driven the cost down because there are so many channels. It's not as it was in the past where you had the 3 major networks, and in order to advertise on one of them, you're bumping up against national advertisers. And I'm sure the candidates have done some demographic work to find out, well, what channels are most popular in the ward that I'm running in.
Well, in Brewer's case, I mean, he's got to figure his people, I guess, like Comedy Central, like that Jon Stewart news stuff. And he thought that it'd be logical to get commercials because he was pretty much in the same time slot. I can't tell you I remember which. If I leave the TV on in the house, I have it on the Food Network. I'm not that big on regular TV, and as a matter of fact, I'm the wrong person to hit commercials with because I like to record everything on my DVR and fast forward through the commercials.
Yeah.
So when a friend of mine says, like, oh, you see this new great commercial for the Dodge Avenger? No, I haven't.
Well, a number of candidates this time around, though, ran, in the same way with Dodge Avenger commercials and running, ads involving their candidacy. And obviously, somebody made the analysis and said, it's still cost effective to do it, even though we're overlapping with a lot of areas that we're not running in. Another candidate that I know personally is Bob Fioretti, who's running in the second ward.
Right, let's talk about him. As a matter of fact, you know him quite well.
Yeah, we used to practice law together for a period of time.
Right, you were with the firm of Fioretti and Desjardins.
Right, and Bob's running in the second ward in runoff, and
that's downtownish, South Loop.
Yeah, it's South and West Loop primarily, and does take in a portion of the Loop as well. So it's kind of a very close to the core of the city.
Yeah, I've read some very nice things about him, as a matter of fact. He seems to be popular with the press.
He's run a very good campaign, in my opinion. He did, as I said, he's one of the people who did run cable ads. He was on CNN, a lot of the news networks, and had television commercials running there. He is, I would think, very well positioned because he is a challenger who ran against an incumbent and actually got a higher vote total. He finished first in the vote total. He didn't obviously get the 50%, but I believe there were 5 candidates in that race. He got 28% of the vote in the February election, and the incumbent alderman got 20%. And generally, if you see the incumbent alderman finishing behind a challenger, basically in that ward, for instance, 80% of the people voted for somebody other than the incumbent. That's not a good sign if you're an incumbent.
I would figure that the incumbent is going to be slowly roasted over an open fire on April 17th.
Well, the one thing you got to keep in mind, though, as any incumbent has, there is certain benefits of being an incumbent, and they can get their name out there. There's a lot of things they can do because they hold the office. So I'm not sure that it's going to be a romp on anybody's side, but if you look at past elections, the general rule is if the incumbent did not finish first in order to get into the runoff, that person really is digging out of a very large hole.
Yeah, I got to imagine it's going to be difficult. And speaking of, well, I don't know about very large hole, but you know what? We're doing a live election show. I want to let everybody know about it. I should have said that in the beginning, and I'll say it a couple more times. Maybe we'll flash it on the screen. But Sunday, April 15th, 2 days before the election, from 10:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. on CanTV 19, my favorite channel, Jim and I are going to be hosting a live election show. I'm not sure all of who we're going to have. I would imagine we'll probably make contact with Alderman Stone at the very least. Maybe we'll ask Bob Fioretti to call in. We'll discuss it. We haven't really put it together yet. I'm going to wait for after Passover. We're filming this before Passover because, well, Passover is a busy time. But and by the way, that show's going to be repeated 9 p.m. that Sunday night on CanTV 19 and 4 p.m. the next day. So that you got 3 chances to catch the show. You can catch it live, which is the most fun because that's when you can see, are they going to mess up? Are they going to mess up? Not usually. Maybe I'll mess up my hair, but
we usually do a
okay.
pretty good job. We're veterans at the free election live shows now, so.
And we want to thank Keith, too, in advance for all his help. Keith McDonald over at CanTV has been great in terms of all the help and everything. And, Keith, we appreciate you a lot. Thanks. And, of course, Sonny's going to be there. Sonny's the official producer of the show.
Yeah,
so,
we have a absolutely well-qualified technical crew, and we do the live show, so there are no technical snafus. The only errors are something he or I might do.
Well, I might make a lot of them, but that's another story.
But it's live. That's why it's fun.
Yeah. Speaking of errors, by the way, you know what? Internet's another thing that people are talking about quite a bit. And you know what? I've become popular in my old age. I've got a few things. You know what? I do, once in a while I like to do a Google search on myself. Well, I did get calls from people, hey, you're being slandered. Maybe I should do this chronologically. So, yeah, I don't get to be slandered too often, but I was. There's basically, I call them the West Rogers Park Yahoos. But in any event, this is from a woman. I don't want to mention her name, and I'm not going to give the actual website, but I'm reading verbatim from printout. They're talking about the Hank Rubin campaign in 1991.
Well, that's ancient history, isn't it?
Ancient history. And I said, you're a lawyer. I'll ask your opinion on this. There are a few facts here I remember. Okay. First, the Hank is gay and homosexual whispering smear campaign in the Jewish community. I read it on the yellow journalism rag he calls a newspaper written by Avi Meyers. I still have the copy. That Hank was a Jewish straight married man with a girl and another baby boy on the way, and his wife was in bed during most of the campaign, made no difference. Well, whatever. I don't need to read much more than that. Now, you know, it's funny because having written in that and having published it, I got a copy of that paper too. And the first time I ever heard anybody refer to Hank Rubin as a homosexual was in this horrible blog.
Well, I just find it kind of curious that this is a race that took place now, 16 years ago?
Oh, sour grapes. I mean, the person still dislikes me, obviously.
I would think that people would have let go by now and moved on to some more recent events. But, you know, it's going to be very interesting. One dynamic I think we need to talk about is the runoffs. Now, the question is going to be, how is turnout going to be in the runoffs? Because
by the way, I see your dodging, but I just wanted to ask you, when somebody does something in print like that, that is not true.
Well, defamation, you've got to show that, number one, that they said something that was not true.
Right.
And then it damaged you in some way in the eyes of the community.
Well, actually, I hate to say it, but if she's got the reputation that I know she has, I probably look really good because of it.
So it's not enough that somebody says something false. You've got to show that because of that statement, your reputation suffered, that other people thought less of you, or other people said, gee, I never knew that about him. Or
yeah, let me just close off this segment real quick, too, because I just wanted to talk about the Internet, and then it'll be go. Then I Googled myself. Okay, and I've got this over here. First of all, so I started reading Getting Back to Stone's Hack Avi Meyers. You know, okay, so I don't, Avi Meyers, wait a minute, where is he? Here, I've heard of him. Mentioned that he had invited the other candidates to appear on his show. I find that unbelievable. And by the way, here I've got an email. By the way, if this person really was connected with the Brewer campaign, and he had talked to Owen Braw, he would know that here's an email from Owen Braw saying, it was good talking to you. I'm really sorry you can't make it on the 12th, blah, blah, blah. And last point along these lines was the same person talks about, did you catch Avi Meyers' show? Wasn't worth catching. Well, that's okay. You can say that all you like. But it goes... Probably not. Meyers isn't a journalist. He's the mouthpiece for the machine in the 50th Ward. A real journalist would never accept a political position, but Meyers has. He is Stone's boy, bought and paid for. Maybe more evidence of corruption in the 50th Ward. Well, you know what? Owner of the dog poop site. And we know who you are, by the way. It's pretty obvious from the initials and your statements on other things. I don't work for the 50th Ward. I don't do any business with the 50th Ward or the city. Sorry, I don't. I do this. I support Alderman Stone because I like Alderman Stone and I like what Alderman Stone is doing, and I'm hoping he does get 12 more years. Okay.
Well, that's one of the dangers of the internet is it does allow for a discourse, but there's really no verification of information. People can post literally anything they want on it.
Well, Sam Smith, who's my favorite sports writer, he's the Bulls beat writer and not the beat writer, but he's a Bulls columnist and basketball columnist in the Tribune, talked about how he's been covering the NBA for 30 years and building up contacts and leads and all the rest of it. And some guy's in his underwear, you know, at the computer, you know, scratching his head, making stuff up. And you know, bang, credibility. Well, the nice thing about this is that basically there's like about 3 people on these websites that keep going back and forth. And
well, you know, the internet, as I said, there's no verification process. People are able to put anything they want on the internet, which in many ways is good and allowed free interchange of ideas. But the other side of the coin is I think you can read some of these sites and get a flavor. And if it continues to be scurrilous stuff and stuff that you can tell people have not done any verification of facts before they put it in writing. The easy thing is you just don't have to read those sites.
No, you don't have to read the sites at all. And as a matter of fact, I don't think too many people do. And the people that do, I think, get very turned off because they are mean. I mean, the meanness, the way people,
Well, political discourse has become that, though. If you look at all the negative attack ads and things like that, nobody's talking about, real positions in a lot of these ads. It's just they take one kernel of truth and then manufacture a whole commercial about it to try to knock somebody. And that's where you would hope the internet would be helpful, that there'd be actual factual information presented, then people could make.
It's even things like Wikipedia. Wikipedia. I used to Google and Wikipedia would come up, and it's a handy tool. It's funny. As long as you mention that, there was one other thing. Real quick, that there was a guy, Rich Consoldi, who's been on the show. Now, Rich is a nice guy. We don't agree politically, but Rich is a nice guy. I happen to like Rich. And he's involved with KF2 in 2411. So he, when there was the attack on the, when that girl got beat up in Emerson Park, Rich posted a thing from, he found a thing on the web, and he posted Stacey Backer's story from ABC News. And anyway, this woman writes in, who's one of the officers of the West Rogers Park Community Organization. By the way, speaking of which, it's pretty much a political organization. They don't want to say they are, but everybody's got dollar signs. And when I went there with Mike Moses to see what a meeting was like, if this was a revival meeting, it was sort of like, can you feel the hate? I mean, there was just mean like crazy. It was unreal. So. Anyway, over here, so this person, this officer, writes back to Rich Consoldi. Rich, I'm kind of speechless here. That website link below is for a white nationalist website. A quick glance at the topics and postings revealed a virulent anti-African, anti-American, anti-immigrant, anti-gay, anti-Semitic, etc., and so on and so forth. Just for the record, my sister's a lesbian, my great-grandfather was probably a Jew, my grandparents were immigrants, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what to say to you. I want to be all neighborly and constructive, but honestly, I'm pretty pissed off. Do you really see that website as a worthwhile source of information? Help me out here, group. I can't be the only one stammering at my keyboard trying to figure out a polite way to say what the... Well, anyway, you know what? It's funny. I read that, and it's like I started getting all this cold feeling inside. And my gut reaction was, what's this? What happened to benefit of the doubt? If I'm looking for something on the web, I type something into Google, bang, it pops up. And you know what? This is the thing with this WRPCO. It's like, can you feel the hate?
Well, again, we get back. There's no real regulation of the web. People can post whatever they want there. It's a matter of their opinion. Some people post things that they know aren't true, just to get a rise out of people. And again, it's like anything else. You can choose to read it or not. And I think, when you look at these websites, you get a pretty good idea once you've seen them a couple times whether they seem to be
normal people
accurate.
Can tell.
And most people say, well, I'm not going to waste my time looking at this if it's just nothing but unsubstantiated charges.
Yeah, one last thing, and I'll let this close out this whole episode, and then I'll throw all these papers away. I got to tell you, it was just funny because one of the people from that same organization. Now, by the way, all these. Now, you know what? They asked Stone to put 10 people on the tip board. 11. 10 of them saw Stone. He approved them all, even though, they've got dollar signs in their window. They're for the opponent and all that. But you know what? Alderman Stone, in fairness to him, he wanted a nice, balanced situation in the award. And he let everybody be represented, and I think it was great. So one of the guys, and he's been very vocal on the website, and he's one of the few people that actually signs his name, by the way. Most of these things are anonymous. So he wanted, their organization was going to have they were calling it a debate or a forum or whatever, an aldermanic forum. And you know what? When the chairman of the organization has dollar signs on his window and his lawn, and all the other members do, and the only two people at that meeting that weren't going to vote, that were going to vote for Alderman Stone, were Mike Moses and myself. That was pretty clear. So this guy actually wrote on the web that he was going to show up at Alderman Stone's office and he was going to discuss it with them that night. The guy comes in wearing a Stone button. This guy's picture's on Nazy Dollar's website on the front page. The guy comes in wearing the Stone button. and tries to come in under the pretense of some zoning thing in another.
He didn't have some conversion then, huh?
And he was basically told, it's like, if you want to talk about the zoning thing, we're more, Alderman Stone will be happy to meet with you. But if you just want to talk about this, this so-called forum that his organization was running, I mean, if you're the Democratic candidate, let's say, would you want to walk into a forum moderated by the Republican Party?
Well, the sad part is, Avi, you remember several years back when the Northtown Community Council was a real viable organization, and we were both members, but there was that organization's strength was there was a real cross-section of people there, and they may have had different political views or other views, but the organization was a legitimate community organization, and I remember attending debates that were sponsored by the Northtown Community Council.
And we sponsored them together with the Rogers Park Community Council, the Edgewater Community Council. But the thing is, we were representative. In other words, the Northtown Community Council was an umbrella group, and the individual members of the council, one was the head of this organization, let's say North Boundary Homeowners League,
block clubs, things like that.
Exactly, and everybody represented somebody. This new organization, and I had them on the show, and I was all for the idea because we really need a good overall organization. But they don't really, they're boon parents, they represent pretty much themselves. All their emphasis has been political. They very much want to, they're very much anti-Bernie Stone. And, when I was at the meeting too, what represents the ward, and it was funny in light of Laura Washington's column today, everybody in that meeting was white. I mean, everybody, you walk outside, I live 2 doors from Boone School, I see the crowd getting out, I've walked by Clinton when it gets out. We are the single most diverse neighborhood there is.
There's no doubt about that.
And we've got everything. And this organization, a bunch of white people. No, there's nothing wrong with that.
Well,
white people are entitled to representation. I think I'm kind of white myself.
If you look at it, though, like we talked about, when the Northtown Community Council was a viable organization, there was a certain amount of credibility because, people understood that if a debate or some kind of forum was hosted by the organization, it wouldn't be shaded one way or the other. Let the candidates come in, let the candidates answer questions, let the candidates make their statements, and then the people who attended, would have an objective way of saying, well, I liked what that person said, or I didn't like what that person said, or I got a question that I wanted to ask and got it answered. But if you recall, Avi, those were very well attended meetings.
We had hundreds of people sometimes.
500 people show up.
Places were packed. It was great. We even did things like gubernatorial debates.
Yeah, and it's important, I think, that communities have organizations that are objective, and that way then a candidate will come in feeling like there may be people in the crowd who agree or disagree with me, but I'm going to have an opportunity to say what I have to say and let people evaluate it.
No question about it. I'm sorry, I did want to mention that during the show, and by the way, we're about 22 and a half minutes in already.
Okay.
So, but you know what? You wanted to talk about the runoff process?
The one thing I think will be very interesting to watch in the runoffs is there's 2 schools of thoughts on runoffs. One is that because you don't have a mayor's race and a treasurer and a clerk that are kind of high-profile races and citywide, to bring out voters, that runoffs sometimes then will see a decrease in voter turnout. Now, on the other hand, sometimes people will be saying, no, more people are going to come up because it's localized and they're coming out voting for issues that are right in their backyard and that they have a direct interest in. So I think it'll be fun to watch the turnouts, and I'll tell you right now, there'll be some wards that fall below the 32% turnout that we had in the February election.
We had 43%, as a matter of fact, in the
50th ward. Yeah, citywide it was about 32%, and you're going to see wards that fall below that in the runoffs, and you're going to see wards that exceed that. And generally speaking, watch those numbers too, because the wards where the turnout is higher than it was in the February election, that's where the challenger generally will have a better shot. Because the people coming out to vote aren't necessarily people who just go along with the incumbent, but they obviously, are coming up because they're concerned about an issue or they're not happy with the way things are and they want to change.
Yeah, my understanding, even though that as of the day we talk, by the time this airs, it'll be over. There's still like a couple days where people can register under certain circumstances downtown. But my understanding is that over 300 Jewish people and about 200 Indians and Pakistanis have been registered by Alderman Stone's troops.
Yeah, well, the registration reopened after the February election. It's closing, will be closed within 30 days of the April election.
They're definitely making a push to enlarge the basic base. The funny thing is, in Laura Washington wrote a column today, she was wrong on Chicago Tonight too when she talks about the makeup of the 50th. I hate these people who are downtown who talk about areas like this who are unfamiliar with the area. You know, Bernie Stone's base support is not the old white folk. I mean, he does have Jewish support, but there aren't as many Jews as there used to be. The funny thing is, it's the Indians, the Pakistanis. He's got support from various Hispanic groups, you know, his business organizations, people like Miguel Davalier, you know, as well as the Jewish groups. You know, the white Christians are really more on the other side of the fence. To a certain extent.
I think one other thing that I want to mention, too, there is early voting for this election again. The early voting numbers were very disappointing for the February election. I think they only had about 25,000 people citywide come out, and they had a site in every single ward this time, and the sites were open 7 days a week. And each of the wards where there's a runoff, there will be an early voting site this time, as well as the downtown site. And they will be open Monday through Friday, in the wards, basically 9 to 5, and also on Saturdays. For Sunday voting, you'll have to go downtown. None of the ward sites will be open on Sundays.
Yeah,
but early voting is really a great way if you want to have your vote counted and you're concerned that you might be out of town or you just make it busy that day. Or
I think it's a really smart idea.
You know, we've had snowstorms in April too.
And there was any problems last election in terms of machines and stuff?
You know, the run-of-the-mill problems, but the early voting went very smoothly, you know, in part, unfortunately, because so few people used it. You know, there wasn't any real real crunch or anything. But I encourage people because it's the same as voting in your precinct on Election Day. Your vote gets counted, and you can really do it at your convenience on a nice sunny day when, you know, it's easy for you to stop off. In the 50th Ward, Warren Park is an early voting site.
Where you can vote for Alderman Stone. That's my personal favorite. Or in the second ward, you can vote for Bob Fioretti.
Right.
Well, you like Alderman Stone also. But
you know, Potawatomi Park is open. And the other thing to keep in mind, you don't have to
we got a big runoff in 49. We didn't even talk about that.
Yeah, we didn't even get there. But you can early vote at any one of the sites, no matter where you live. So, for instance, if you're in the second ward and you want to early vote and you live in the 50th, you can go in there and vote just the same as if you went to Warren Park. And you can vote at 69 West Washington in the basement 7 days a week.
Wow. Wow. That's speaking about getting down low.
Well, they're making it very easy, and I think it would be a good thing to show the Board of Elections that people are willing to use it, because they were very disappointed with the turnout for the February election. It was very costly to run 51 sites, you know, on a 7-day-a-week basis. And they're probably looking, just from a budget standpoint, are we going to do this again at as many sites for the amount of time, because it doesn't seem people are interested.
I think it's such a great idea. It really is. And I don't understand, you know, like it's a privilege to vote. And if people want to, well, in this case, I'm very happy with my particular incumbent, but I understand in cases where people aren't.
Whoever you vote for, though, you know, how can you make it easier for people than to make it basically a 7-day-a-week operation that you can come whenever it's convenient for you at a place close to your home, or if you happen to work in another area, you can go someplace that's close to your workplace, whatever. You know, it's really at the point now if somebody's complaining about the system, you know, the system has really done a great deal to accommodate people who do want to vote, and it comes down to the individual, and if you're not that motivated, then you're really not in a position, if you won't come out and vote, to start criticizing things later.
Oh, one thing I did want to mention, by the way, that's very important. On the previous show, I listed Avi's blog spot, whatever, which I'm not going to give the address for. After reading all this stuff on the internet, I was so disgusted. I mean, that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring it up. I was so disgusted by the meanness of the people. I mean, just meanness and the spite, and, you know, you can feel the hate, like I was saying, that I just decided I don't want any part of that. You know, like, I've got the forum on the show, that's nice. I'm happy to talk to people, to vote for Alderman Stone. You have no idea how many wonderful things he's done, and we'll be talking to him next week. And don't forget the live show also, which is going to be Sunday, April 15th, at 10:30 to 11:30 on CanTV 19. And we will be live in the studio with him and who knows who else.
Oh, well, plenty of call-ins, I'm sure.
That's for sure. You want to give everybody your information? Because we're about out of time.
Okay. Well, if you need to reach me for any reason, have any election-related questions or other things, I can be reached at 312-422-5560.
I want to thank Jim Nally, my guest. I want to thank my entire technical crew, Sonny Hersh. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody, and vote for Alderman Stone. I'm not going to say early and often, just one per customer. Okay, and he's been great, and people don't begin to appreciate what a good man he is and how good he's been for the neighborhood. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.